Good afternoon, Houdat Nation. A big day, week 18 of the regular season with a playoff berth on the line. The Saints need to get their own business done. They need a little bit of help from the Los Angeles Rams. We will get into that. So it's the final regular season pregame show for the Saints News Network. Myself, Brendan Boylan, my friend, colleague, Bob Rose. Bob, you guys had some cooler weather up there in Pennsylvania. I'm complaining about it being in the 50s here in North Carolina, but the New Orleans Saints are going to hot Atlanta to take on the Atlanta Falcons today. Falcons sitting at 7-9, the New Orleans Saints at 8-8. So the Falcons playing for nothing but pride. And of course, when you have the arguably bitterest rivalry in the South, you know both these teams are going to give everything they have. What can you tell us about the Atlanta Falcons, and how have you been over this week with the buildup to maybe the most important final week of the regular season in recent Saints memory?
Well, good afternoon to you, Brendan. Good afternoon to you, all you Hoodats that are tuning in with us. Make sure you join us again at halftime for our live halftime show. And, I was at the top of the list of the people criticizing, Goodell for allowing and producing an 18th game in the 18th week, 17th game in the regular season. But let's face reality, Saints fans. If there weren't a 17th game, our New Orleans Saints would be on the outside looking in. So we should be thankful for this year at least that they did add one. But I completely agree with you. I mean, first of all, I don't subscribe to the theory that many teams or many players just lie down if they have nothing to play for. But it's a special feeling when you get to knock off your rivals and potentially keep them out of the playoffs, like the reality that the Atlanta Falcons are facing this year or this week, excuse me. And we saw, not even 2 full months ago, the Falcons go into New Orleans and really manhandle the Saints. I mean, the Saints were starting Trevor Siemian for the first week, just a week after Jameis Winston's season-ending injury. But what surprised me about that contest was the fact that the Saints defense came out so flat. And you got to love the fourth quarter comeback that New Orleans offense behind Siemian produced and even took the lead for a few seconds. But then the Saints defense let him down again with a long pass to Cordero Patterson, which set up the game-winning field goal. So, yeah, that's what I took away from that game, was just how flat the Saints defense played. And the responsibility for victory has been on the shoulders of that unit all year long. And, say this about Atlanta. They're awful defensively. They're awful in the running game. But Matt Ryan, 36-year-old Matt Ryan, still has the potential to put up numbers, as we saw earlier this year, to put up numbers and points on the scoreboard.
And we'll have to see which type of Matt Ryan we get today. I'm glad you brought up Cordero Patterson. He's had a resurgence in his career, and the Atlanta Falcons have used him in their offensive scheme like no other team has. And he's really found what looks like a home for at least the remainder of his NFL career if he chooses to stay in Atlanta, because that offense suits him really well. However, since he picked up a knock earlier this season, Patterson hasn't been producing the same type of numbers. And you go down the list of this Atlanta team, and particularly in the time that Matt Ryan's been there, he's always had a Pro Bowler or a borderline superstar type of playmaker. You look at a guy like Roddy White. You look at a guy like Julio Jones. You had Michael Turner in his prime out of the backfield. The Freemans and the Colemans out of the backfield. He had a Tony Gonzalez. And then you go on the list this year, and it's like, well, there's Calvin Ridley, but he hasn't played. And you have to give the kid credit for deciding to say, you know what, I'm going to take care of my mental health. I'm going to step away from the game. However, it doesn't look like Ridley's going to be back in Atlanta next season. He wants a fresh start. And then you go, well, they got Kyle Pitts, and he's on pace to break the rookie record for receiving yards by a tight end, and he's a really special player, a unicorn, if you will. But he's still a rookie. And then the list gets thinner and thinner, and you combine that with a beat-up offensive line, a Saints defense that's playing phenomenal football, and particularly Matt Ryan's foe in Cameron Jordan, who has sacked him 22 times in his NFL career. Jordan's got 7.5 sacks over the last 3 games. To your point, looking at the Saints defense going into this game, they look a lot more motivated, stronger. and more questions on the offensive side of the football. But going into this matchup, I think the Saints defense definitely has the upper hand. But you can never put anything past Matty Ice, who, as much as Saints fans might have a little bit of pain after they hear me say this, is a borderline Hall of Famer at the end of his career.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I don't like Matt Ryan either, and I certainly don't like the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, but I believe at the end of the day, when Matt Ryan calls it a career, he will someday be enshrined in Canton. And yeah, the numbers deserve him that spot. But also to your point, this Atlanta New Orleans rivalry is as unpredictable as they come. I mean, how many times during the Drew Brees versus Matt Ryan era, when we'd see so many offensive stars, you just listed them for the Falcons, but for the Saints, you had Kamara, Ingram, Jimmy Graham, Marcus Colston. I could go down the list there, but we'd see a Falcons Saints game that ended up 20-17 or 17-14. So this rivalry is nothing but unpredictable. So keep that in mind when we go into our view today.
And one name I have to throw, because you left it out because you said there's so much. I got to see him in Atlanta do it a couple times with the Atlanta Falcons. Reggie Bush had a couple really good games against the Falcons in his career, but it's been such a fun rivalry over the years, to your point. And then you have this game. It means a lot. I know a lot of Saints fans traveled out. It's not that bad of a trip out to Atlanta, but they were this week handing out rally towels to anybody that was making the trip. There was some of Saints Twitter that said, how funny would it be if the Saints have a Who Dat chant in Atlanta today, because they didn't have a Who Dat chant for their final home game of the season. So there's all this good fun, but at the end of the day, we have a football game to play. So let's look first at New Orleans, who's getting a little bit healthier. There's some question marks with the injury report, question marks of Ryan Ramcheck and Mark Ingram coming into today. What's their status, Bob?
Our own John Hendricks, threw out the piece just before you and I came onto the air, the inactive list. So let's hit that first. Obviously, we don't need to rehash all the Saints players that are on injured reserve. That would take the rest of the show. But Teron Armstead and Mark Ingram offensively are both inactive. Both players dealing with knee injuries. PJ Williams, who has had a terrific season, in my opinion, and Bradley Roby are both inactive defensively. That is key. Because that thins out your secondary, who has been playing really, really well. And that has to worry you against a defense that gave up 340 plus yards to Matt Ryan, back in November. Marcus Davenport and Ryan Ramcheck are both game time decisions. I don't know what you've heard so far, Brendan. I have not heard anything more than that. Other than it looks like they're going to give it a go. Ramcheck, that is key. The Saints have gone most of the last 8 games without both of their tackles, Armstead and Ramcheck, and it's really completely crippled this offense. So I have said repeatedly, even if they could get one of those guys back, that makes so much difference to the offense. Because now explosive players like Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill can get to the edge, something that's been lacking from this offense for the last 2 months. Defensively, Davenport has been playing almost as well as Cam Jordan recently. 92 is nearly unblockable even against double teams. And with Passanio and Peyton Turner still on injured reserve, you need a 100% healthy Davenport, if nothing else, than to attract some of the attention away from Cam Jordan at the other edge.
Well, I'm glad you said Ryan Ramcheck, because I would make the argument that Ramcheck is more important to this style of Saints offense in getting him back than Teron Armstead. You look at Ryan Ramcheck at his PFF grades in the run game in his career. He's been the highest rated tackle in terms of run grades 2 of the last 3 years. Very important. Happy to get him back. And of course, you look at what Sean Payton said about all these injuries for the New Orleans Saints. 58 different Saints have started this year. That's an NFL record. But he said that more than the loss of Winston, not having Michael Thomas the entire year, the biggest thing for this team was losing those cornerstone pieces at tackle. So I know Sean Payton would be ecstatic to at least have one of them back in a must-win situation today. You talked a little bit about the Saints defense. Let's talk about that. A little thin at the defensive back spot. You would imagine Gardner Johnson is going to have the assignment of Kyle Pitts today. But who are some guys you're looking to step up and play a PJ Williams type role? And is this a game where the Saints could expect to see a little bit more of Ken Crawley, who at the beginning of the year was projected to have a big role, and then the play of Paulson Adebo kind of knocked that back?
And let's start with Adebo. I think he is going to be the key to this defense. He has been heavily targeted this year, but the young man has stood up pretty well. In pass coverage. He's no Marshawn Lattimore, but he has taken on some big name receivers and acquitted himself well. So I do think I 100% agree with you that Gardner Johnson is going to play a much bigger role as well. One thing that stood out to me when the Falcons beat the Saints in New Orleans back in November was that the Saints really didn't have a good game plan for either Cordero Patterson or Kyle Pitts. There were a number of times, where a linebacker would be lined up on either one of the two. And of course, a quarterback as smart as Matt Ryan is going to go that direction very quickly. And as good as Demario Davis and Quan Alexander are in coverage, you described Kyle Pitts as a unicorn earlier. Simply stated, there is no linebacker in the league. If Quan and Demario can't cover Kyle Pitts, nobody can. Pitts and Patterson, depending on where he's lined up in the formation, it's going to be key to watch how Dennis Allen, schemes to combat that. But that's where I think a guy like Adebo, who's a bigger physical guy, you might see Adebo matched up on Pitts. With a guy like Gardner Johnson, who's a little bit smaller but very quick and physical. Gardner Johnson might be lined up on Patterson when Cordero goes into the slot. So game planning is very important today for the Saints defense.
Looking at the Falcons offensively, big question mark for them is offensive lineman Jalen Mayfield. He did not practice all week, carries a questionable designation. Like I said, this is a Falcons team that's beat up, missing some of those key playmakers that I talked about earlier. Who's a guy for Atlanta that could really give New Orleans trouble that's not named Pitts or Patterson?
If you look at offensively, Russell Gage and Zacchaeus, Olamide Zacchaeus, the wideouts, they both had really good outings against New Orleans back in November. Neither player is anywhere close to the caliber of Julio Jones or even Calvin Ridley. But Gage especially has Ryan's trust on third downs and big situations. So the Saints are going to have to be very aware of Olamide Zacchaeus and Russell Gage. Especially Russell Gage, I like a lot as a receiver. So both of these players have the capability to hurt New Orleans if they aren't aware of them.
And looking at the offensive side of the ball for the New Orleans Saints, you're starting to see a little bit of chemistry build between Taysom Hill and Marquez Callaway, something that a lot of Saints fans were hoping for. And fantasy football people, man, there was so much hope on Marquez Callaway coming into the season. Didn't live up to what a lot of people hoped for him in terms of those fantasy numbers, but I think he's shown plenty to New Orleans Saints fans and fans across the NFC South that when Michael Thomas comes back, Callaway is going to be a really good number 2 option for the New Orleans Saints. And Deontay Harris, when he's been available, has definitely shown growth as a wide receiver here in the NFL. A lot of this game is going to be on Taysom Hill's legs, but I went out in my piece of takeaways from last week's game, said it was Taysom Hill's best outing as a passer this season, and then going back and reflecting maybe his best outing as a passer in his NFL career. The Saints really needed that passing attack to jumpstart a lackadaisical offense in the first half against Carolina, and Taysom Hill has had pretty good success against the Atlanta Falcons. 2 starts, 2 victories for Hill, and both games thrown about 233 yards. What do you expect out of Taysom Hill in this one?
Much of the same. First and foremost, Atlanta has a heck of a time defending mobile quarterbacks. And Taysom in 2 starts against Atlanta last year rushed for 49 yards in the first game, 83 in the second, and a total of 2 touchdowns on the ground. So Atlanta is going to be very aware of Taysom Hill when he's on the move. Despite that, Taysom is still going to have to make plays, with his legs. That's his best attribute. But he also, to your point, he also completed 75% of his throws in those 2 starts against Atlanta last year, and threw for 2 touchdowns and, knock on wood, no interceptions. So as long as now remember too, Taysom Hill had a guy named Michael Thomas to throw to. He doesn't have that, but I agree. he's working up a really good chemistry with Marquez Callaway. He already had a pretty good chemistry going with Deontay Harris, or Deontay Hardy, as he wants to be called now. So Hardy and Callaway are going to have to come up big for Taysom. But I like what Sean Payton's been doing with Taysom in recent weeks. He's having him throw the ball on the opening series, quick rhythmic throws to get his quarterback into a rhythm and build his confidence a little bit. Taysom is never going to be the most accurate passer in the world, and he's far from a polished product. But if you get him going early, he's still an NFL quarterback who can make plays.
Well, and to your point, you say he's not the most accurate quarterback, but you look at his career in games in which the Saints have started him and won. Man, that completion percentage is right around 70%. And I think a lot of that has to do with what you just said, how Sean Payton has utilized Taysom Hill in the offensive game plan and made things a lot easier for him to just get the ball out into the hands of his playmakers. And he's got one of the best playmakers in football in Alvin Kamara, who's going to be without his running mate today in Mark Ingram. How do the Saints take some of that load off Kamara? And what do you expect out of a guy like Tony Jones Jr., who had a phenomenal preseason and then got injured and has still not really found his path, especially since Mark Ingram rejoined New Orleans midway through the season?
Yeah, and I think that's what happened with Tony. After the injury, we never really got to see what he could do because the Saints had to make the smart move in bringing back Ingram in that trade with Houston. And because of that, I mean, who are you going to hand the ball to, Mark Ingram or Tony Jones? There's no decision in my opinion. But Tony Jones needs to be effective between the tackles. That's where his best attribute is. He is a physical runner. So the onus needs to be on the Saints offensive line first and foremost for any of those runners to get a little bit of push at the point of attack. Taysom Hill running the ball and Tony Jones between the tackles, they're going to have to take a little bit of the load off Kamara with at least one of them being effective picking up yardage on the ground. And if they're able to do so, then you could start to use Kamara as a receiver a little bit more often, which we saw early in the game last week. You need Kamara to get on track either as a rusher or as a receiver for your offense to be at optimum operating level.
And this is one of the few teams in the NFL. We talked earlier this year about how Tampa Bay's linebackers match up with Alvin Kamara. Atlanta's linebackers in recent years have matched up pretty well with Kamara. That's going to be something certainly to watch. And talking about that Atlanta defense, they got some playmakers on that side, but they also have a lot of youth on that side. Who are some guys that are going to be dangerous against New Orleans, and where are some positions where the Saints could certainly attack, whether that's in the middle, between the tackles, whether it's outside with the defensive backs? If you had to pick one position to attack, where are you attacking?
I think if I'm the Saints, I do attack on the edge, and I attack with Taysom Hill. That's why Taysom has been so effective as a rusher. Not only in those two starts against Atlanta at quarterback last year, but even earlier in his career, when Taysom was used in that jack of all trades role. I think, and if Ramcheck plays and he's anywhere close to even 80%, that's the side that they're going to run over. That's the side, that's the edge that they're going to attack, and they're going to do so with Kamara and Taysom Hill. Having said that, Atlanta's best two defensive players are their linebackers, Deion Jones and one of the most underrated defenders in the National Football League, Foyesade Oluokun, who had a terrific outing, last November against the Saints, and played pretty well against them last year too. Both those guys I compared to Demario Davis because they are that skilled. They don't possess the anticipation and play diagnostic abilities that Demario does, but they're still young guys, and they can run down anybody from sideline to sideline. So if you are going to attack on the edge, I would do so with very fast precision. Longer developing plays aren't going to work against these guys. They'll run it down. But Atlanta is also thin in the trenches. I love Grady Jarrett, defensive tackle, defensive end. He's a big-bodied, physical mauler in the trenches. But Atlanta, other than Marlon Davidson, who still hasn't shown a great deal as a second-round pick in 2020, they don't have a lot of names up front. So you can wear down that Atlanta front if you're willing to be patient and if your offense can move the football consistently.
I think it's fair to say the New Orleans Saints offensively have played some ugly football But by all means, they've been finding ways to string off some victories here late in the season. I think we're both in agreement that's exactly the recipe for success again today against Atlanta. Need the defense to play a lot better than they did in November, and this offense just has to do enough and find the end zone maybe once or twice. You look back at that Carolina game. I mean, when you kick 4 field goals, it means you're moving the ball okay, but you're not finishing the job. If the Saints could certainly go finish the job on some of those drives, I don't think just in this game, but potentially games moving forward into the postseason, the Saints could find some success. So let's talk about that. Saints fans, if you haven't heard already, there's a very simple formula for the New Orleans Saints to make the playoffs and get that 7th and final seed. All they have to do is beat Atlanta today and hope that the Los Angeles Rams defeat some old foes back when they were in the NFC West together, the San Francisco 49ers. And remember, this isn't a rollover type of game for LA. They need the win to clinch the NFC West. So a lot on the line for both sides. Bob, can you give the people a little bit of a preview of that Rams and Niners game and maybe a couple things to look out for while they're scoreboard watching?
Well, first and foremost, the 49ers have beaten the Rams 5 straight times. So this is not going to be a pushover game for the Rams by any stretch. And the 49ers themselves, as you pointed out, are fighting. They need a win or a Saints loss just to get into the playoffs. So they're going to be fighting. But the Rams need a win, as you said, just to not only clinch the NFC West, but grab a hold of that number 2 seed, which is going to be very key as far as matchups go. The Rams have had problems this season against physical opponents. And there's one thing about the 49ers. They're always going to, they're going to give you inconsistent quarterback play, but they're going to be physical with you up front on both sides of the football. And I defy you to find too many receivers that's had a better 2021 season than Deebo Samuel for the San Francisco 49ers. Deebo has absolutely had an all-pro campaign, in my opinion. But the 49ers are a little bit banged up back in the secondary and at linebacker. And as we know, from watching and playing against Sean McVay's offense, McVay likes to run those crossers and pick plays to get his receivers in space. And I mentioned Deebo Samuel. If there is one receiver who's having a better year than Deebo Samuel, it's the LA Rams Cooper Kupp. Saints fans, if you're going to be petty, we also need to root for Kupp to have less than 12 receptions today, because 12 receptions surpasses Michael Thomas's 149 catches, which is of course the current NFL record. But this is going to be a definite entertaining game to watch. I like the Rams in it because I think they're playing on a little bit of a roll. But Matthew Stafford, the Rams quarterback, has been turning the ball over more recently, and that could fit right into San Francisco's hands. As long as Stafford avoids early turnovers, I do like the Rams to come away with a victory in this one.
I like what you said, too, with the Niners. Inconsistent quarterback play. There's been a lot of people ready to give up on that Jimmy G experiment. And, hey, they drafted a guy really high in Trey Lance. And, hey, I said it from the jump when he was selected. The FCS puts out some ballers. You got to watch out for those small school guys. And I think he's proven to be a guy that could certainly be the franchise or face of the franchise for that team. But it's never fun to have questions at quarterback. We know all about that, right, Saints fans? 4 different ones this year for the first time since 1999. Well, as we wrap up the final pregame show of the regular season, we're going to have some bold predictions and score predictions as well. Bob, I'm going to start with my bold prediction, and that's that the Saints sack Matt Ryan at least 4 times today, and that the defense comes out and finishes the regular season on a high note. I'm going to take the Saints in this one 24-10, and they get it done in Atlanta, a place that they've played particularly well in recent memory.
And you're right. The Saints have played extremely well in Atlanta under Sean Payton. They've been 10-4 when they go on the road to face the Falcons. And I expect more of the same. I actually think that if the Saints are going to win this game, they'll have to get more than 4 sacks on Matt Ryan. I don't see Atlanta being able to run the ball consistently. I think they're going to try to use Cordero Patterson more on the edge. Kyle Pitts has been banged up too. But again, I'm going to be watching to see how Dennis Allen plays Patterson and Pitts in space. And don't be surprised if even a guy like Marshawn Lattimore is on one of those guys if they line up wide. If that happens, then Adebo and Gardner Johnson have to come up big to shut down Russell Gage and the other Atlanta receivers. But pressure on Ryan is the key. He's had a lot of great outings against New Orleans, but on the offensive side of the football for the Saints, they're going to have to mix it up. But as you pointed out, they moved the ball very well against the Carolina defense that's heads and shoulders above the quality of this Falcons defense. So I think the Saints are going to put a few touchdowns on the scoreboard today. But I think the game is going to be close, as most Falcons Saints games are. I see it going 21-16 Saints.
So we're in the same boat. The Saints get to at least 20. I think if they do that, they put themselves in a great position to win football games, especially with how this offense is playing right now. Well, Bob and I both have the Saints winning. Obviously, fingers crossed that the Rams can do the same. But Bob, before we let you go, where can everyone follow you on the World Wide Web?
Oh, folks, thank you again for tuning in with us on our final pregame show of the regular season. Hopefully, Brendan and I will have a couple more shows for you in the postseason. But you can find me on Twitter at BobbyR2613, where you can jump over on Facebook, where I can be found under my name, Bob Rose. And all of our work can be found at the Saints News Network, or at Saints News on Twitter, or just go to the SI.com page where we do all the content for the Sports Illustrated team channel for the New Orleans Saints.
And for myself, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram over at BT Boylan. As Bob said, just head over to saints.media, catch up with all the latest. We have John Hendricks reporting live from Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Make sure to give him a follow on Twitter as well. Well, we will see you guys at halftime. We hope you guys will join us. New Orleans Saints kick off against the Atlanta Falcons in a little over 20 minutes. Again, a Saints win and a Rams win. Saints get the final NFC wild card spot. We'll see you at halftime.